Why is your house still holding heat at 10 o'clock at night when the outdoor temperature dropped an hour ago? I've asked myself that question plenty of times, and I've watched a lot of folks reach straight for the thermostat the moment it gets uncomfortable, instead of stopping to figure out what is actually happening inside their walls. I've spent a long time paying close attention to how houses breathe, or fail to, and I'll tell you plainly, most people are fighting summer heat the expensive way, and they don't have to be. The cooling industry has done a good job convincing everyone that the only serious answer to a hot house is a central air conditioner running all day. But in most climates across the country, that's simply not true, and the people who believe it are paying for it every single month on their electric bill. Before I walk you through the whole system, let me name a couple of things that do not work the way folks think. Closing vents in unused rooms to redirect cool air to the rest of the house. That creates pressure problems in a forced air system and usually makes things worse, not better. And the idea that a ceiling fan cools the air in a room, it doesn't. It only moves air across your skin, which makes you feel cooler. Turn one on in an empty room and you've accomplished nothing except running up the electric bill. Those two misunderstandings alone cost people real money every summer, and they're repeated constantly online and by well-meaning neighbors. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how heat gets into your home, when it arrives, and how to push it back out before it builds up overnight. You'll have a practical, layered system you can start using this week. No major equipment purchases required for most of it, and the whole thing can be done for under $10 in electricity through an entire summer, if you work the method right. Right after the hook here, I want to point you toward the companion guide for this video. Open the camera app on your phone, point it at the QR code in the top right corner of the screen, and scan it. That gets you the full written guide, every method laid out step by step, the seasonal prep checklist, and the room-by-room walkthrough this video can only touch on. That QR code stays pinned up in the top right corner of the screen for the entire video, so you can get to it anytime you're ready. No need to pause right now. The first thing to understand, and I mean really understand, not just nod at, is where heat actually comes from inside a house. There are three main sources: the sun hitting your roof and walls, appliances and lights running inside, and hot outdoor air leaking in through gaps and openings. Most people focus almost entirely on the third one and ignore the first two. That's a costly mistake, because in most homes, the roof and the internal heat sources together are doing far more damage than whatever is sneaking in under the door. Your roof absorbs an enormous amount of solar energy throughout the day. That energy doesn't just stay in the shingles, it moves slowly inward through the roof deck, the rafters, and then down into the attic. The attic holds that heat and keeps radiating it into your living space well into the evening. This process is called thermal lag, and it's the real reason your house feels so uncomfortable at 10 at night, even when the outdoor temperature has already dropped to something reasonable. It's not that hot outside air is rushing in, it's that the house itself is slowly releasing the heat it spent all day collecting. Once you see that clearly, your whole strategy for managing it changes. The biggest practical lever on this problem is attic insulation. A poorly insulated attic acts like a heat battery sitting directly above your bedroom ceiling. The general guidance from most energy programs suggests at least 10 to 14 inches of fiberglass batt insulation or a comparable depth of blown-in material to give you meaningful resistance. If you can get up there safely and check what you have, it's worth doing. Adding adequate insulation is one of the few home improvements that genuinely pays for itself fairly quickly, not over decades, but often within a season or two in reduced cooling costs alone. Attic ventilation is the other half of that equation, and the two work together. A well-vented attic lets the heat that does accumulate escape to the outside rather than pushing down into the living space. Ridge vents along the peak of the roof, soffit vents along the eaves, and gable vents on the ends of the attic work passively. No electricity, no moving parts, no maintenance. If your attic feels like a furnace every afternoon, it may not be getting adequate airflow through the ventilation it has. This is absolutely worth checking before you spend a single dollar on anything else, because improving passive attic ventilation costs little and the payoff is immediate and sustained. Now let's talk about windows, because this is where I see people get it exactly backwards most consistently. A lot of folks open their windows first thing in the morning when the house starts to feel stuffy. But if the outdoor temperature is already higher than it is inside, which in summer it often is by 8 or 9 in the morning, you're letting warm air in and losing the cool the house stored overnight. The correct approach works more like a schedule, and it takes some discipline at first. Keep windows and exterior doors closed during the heat of the day. Roughly from mid-morning through early evening, the house should be sealed up tight, blinds drawn on the sunny sides, letting as little heat in as possible. Once the outdoor temperature drops below the indoor temperature, that crossover usually happens somewhere between 7 and 9 in the evening, depending on your region. That is when you open everything up and let the house breathe hard. You want to move as much cool night air through as you possibly can before you go to bed and close up again for the next day. This one habit, practiced consistently, makes a very significant difference even before you change anything else. The full breakdown of how to time that crossover for different climates is laid out in detail in the guide, including what to do on humid nights when the temperature drops but the air still feels heavy. Open your camera app on your phone, point it at the QR code still in the top right corner of the screen, and scan it. That gets you the seasonal version of this system with specifics for different parts of the country. When you do open the house at night, the goal is cross-ventilation, air moving through the house from one side to the other, not just entering through one window and stalling. You want intake on the side of the house that faces the prevailing evening breeze, and exhaust on the opposite side. Low windows in, high windows out is a useful rule because warm air rises and will naturally exit higher openings while cooler air enters lower ones. If your layout allows it, opening a low window on the shaded north or west side and a high window or vent on the south side creates something close to a natural chimney effect, and it can move a surprising amount of air through the house with no electricity at all. A whole house fan takes this strategy much further, and I think it's one of the most underrated tools in residential cooling. These fans are mounted in the ceiling between the living space and the attic. You open a few windows, flip the switch, and the fan pulls cool evening air through the house and pushes the hot attic air out through the roof vents. They're not the same as attic fans, which only circulate air in the attic itself. A whole house fan is exchanging the actual air in your living space, the air you're breathing, at a high rate of flow. In climates where nights reliably cool down into the 60s or even low 70s, these fans can handle the majority of a home's cooling needs with a fraction of the energy that central air uses. The unit itself typically costs a few $100s installed, and the operating cost through an entire summer can be remarkably low. If you're in a climate with reliably cool nights, this is worth a very serious look. Ceiling fans, and I'll be direct about this because the misconception is everywhere, do not cool the air in the room. What they do is move air across your skin, which speeds up the evaporation of moisture and makes the same temperature feel several degrees cooler to you. That means a ceiling fan is only doing anything useful if a person is in the room to feel it. Running a ceiling fan in an empty room is simply wasting electricity, nothing more. Most fans have a direction switch, usually a small toggle on the motor housing. Counterclockwise rotation in summer, at a medium speed, is what you want. Check yours. A surprising number of fans spend all summer running the wrong direction. And at night, if you're running a whole house fan or relying on natural cross ventilation, a ceiling fan running in the bedroom can make a real difference in sleep comfort. Let's talk about windows from the outside now, because shade is genuinely one of the most powerful tools in this whole system. A window with direct afternoon sun hitting it can let in an enormous amount of heat regardless of how efficient the glass is rated. Exterior awnings, solar screens, or mature trees on the west and south sides of the house address the problem before it even reaches the glass. Interior blinds and curtains do help, but they're considerably less effective than stopping the sun before it enters the window in the first place. Light-colored or reflective interior blinds outperform dark ones. Cellular honeycomb shades are among the best interior options for insulating a window against both heat and cold. If you have large west-facing windows, and west-facing glass in the afternoon is the single worst heat gain problem in most homes, this deserves to be near the top of your priority list. Everything we've been through, the ventilation timing, the window management, the shade and insulation work, it all builds on itself, and the full layered method is written out step by step in the guide. Open the camera app on your phone, point it at the QR code in the top right corner of the screen, and scan it. The guide includes the room-by-room checklist I use for seasonal prep, so you can work through your own house systematically rather than guessing. Heat sources inside the house are something a lot of people overlook until someone points it out, and then they can't stop noticing it. Your oven running for an hour in the afternoon adds a real heat load to the house. The clothes dryer running through a hot afternoon is pushing warm, moist air into your living space. Incandescent bulbs, and there are still plenty of homes with them, produce a significant amount of heat for the light they generate, running all evening. Even a dishwasher going through its drying cycle contributes. In summer, I try to shift oven cooking to early morning or evening, or outdoors when the meal allows it. The dryer I run in the evening after the house has started to cool. If you still have incandescent or older halogen bulbs in heavily used fixtures, switching to LED is one of those changes that has a real and measurable impact on indoor temperature over the course of a day. LEDs produce far less heat for the same amount of light, and over a summer, the savings in both electricity and reduced heat load add up. This sounds like small bore stuff, but add up several hours of oven use, a couple of dryer loads, and a dozen inefficient bulbs running every evening, and you're adding a meaningful extra burden to a house you're trying to keep cool. Managing it costs nothing. Let me talk about something that gets almost no attention, but that I keep coming back to as one of the most elegant parts of this whole approach: thermal mass. Dense materials, concrete, brick, tile, stone, even water, absorb heat slowly during the day and release it slowly at night. A house with tile floors and heavy plaster walls holds its temperature more steadily than one with carpet and lightweight drywall. You can work with this intentionally. The real application of it in this system is simply this: flush the house aggressively with cool air every night so that the floors, the walls, the furniture, everything with any mass, start the day cool. That stored coolness acts as a buffer. It absorbs the incoming heat of the morning more slowly, which buys you additional hours before the house becomes uncomfortable. You're essentially preloading the house every night, so the heat has to work through the buffer before it gets to you. And that is the insight I want you to hold on to, the one I promised earlier that most people have backwards. Most folks treat cooling as a reactive thing. It gets hot, then they do something about it. The entire system I've been describing is the opposite of that. You are building a head start every single night. You are preloading the house with cool so that when the heat arrives the next afternoon, it takes much longer to penetrate, By the time the middle of the afternoon gets uncomfortable, a well-managed house is still drawing on the cool it stored 12 hours earlier. Proactive, not reactive. That shift in thinking is what makes the whole method work. If you have a room that nothing seems to help, a bonus space above a garage, a south-facing bedroom with poor shade, a small window unit used in just that space for a few hours during the worst of the afternoon heat may be the right tool. That is completely different from running whole home central air all day. The idea is surgical use, a small targeted intervention for the one space the passive system can't quite reach, rather than a blanket response to the whole house. I want to put a rough number on this so it's concrete. A ceiling fan running 8 hours a day through a full summer costs somewhere around $5 to $10 in electricity at average rates. A whole house fan running a couple of hours each evening costs somewhere in the range of $20 to $50 for a summer, depending on local rates and how often you use it. The passive methods, shade, insulation, ventilation timing, managing internal heat sources, cost nothing to operate once they're in place. The under $10 figure is achievable if you lean hard on the passive and low-energy approaches and reserve any mechanical cooling for only what those cannot handle. The folks who do this consistently aren't suffering. They're just working with the patterns heat follows instead of throwing expensive electricity at it. Before I close, open your camera app one last time, point it at the QR code still in the top right corner of the screen, and scan it. The guide walks through every method we covered today in a format you can save and come back to, including the step-by-step prep sequence for getting your house ready before the next hot stretch hits. It's the kind of reference that pays for itself the first summer you use it. Here is the plain action plan. This week, check your attic insulation and peek at the ventilation. Put your ceiling fans on the correct counterclockwise summer rotation. Start tracking when the outdoor temperature crosses below indoor in the evening so you know your window. This month, address your west and south-facing windows with shade or reflective coverings. Start shifting oven cooking and dryer use to cooler hours. And if you've been thinking about a whole house fan, this is a good time to look at whether your climate makes it a smart investment. There is no money in teaching someone the simple approach that actually works. No equipment to sell, no service contract to sign, no fancy product to order. The method that makes the most difference is the one that's been around since long before central air existed, and it works in most of the country, most summers better than folks realize. If any of this brought up a question, or if you've got a cooling method you've relied on for years, something your parents or grandparents did that you still do, I'd genuinely like to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. And if you want to go deeper on what to do when you do need to run the AC, how to get the most out of it, and where most people quietly waste money every cycle, that's the next video, and it builds directly on everything we talked about today. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd appreciate it. It's the best way to make sure the next one finds you. Stay cool out there. You've got this.